Hi, how's it going? Scooby here. Thought I'd do a bit on my worm boxes. There's a lot to cover on these, so check the side box. If there's anything I missed, I'll put it in there. Also, you can also look up this information online. A couple years ago, I stumbled upon this and started doing it as a way to compost before I had an outdoor compost bin, and this will work if you're in an apartment or in a place where you just can't have a compost bin. You could still have one of these, and then you're not throwing away all your organic garbage. You can recycle it and use this for something. Throw it on the lawn, throw it on the flower garden, throw it in a park, whatever. Anyway, you can see this one is all finished. These are the worms. Those are red wigglers, and I picked up mine at PetSmart. You can probably pick them up at just about any pet store. You want to get red wigglers, or maybe they might go as red worms. There's a few names for them, but these were labeled as red wigglers, and they usually come in about 50 per package. I bought 3 packages, but I don't think you really need to do that. If you're patient and you buy one package, they'll fill up a bin pretty quick. When they have a lot of space, they will multiply like crazy. So, go over some of the basics. What you can feed this is all your organics: coffee, tea bags, banana peels. What you cannot feed it is fatty things, things with grease or breaded items haven't worked very well. But they'll chew down quite a bit of stuff. Citrus is not recommended because it contains a chemical that can kill the worms, but you can still put a little citrus in here. A couple of notes about bugs. Your bin will attract other bugs, and you'll get some surprise bugs in here. You can also go out and get a handful of dirt and add bugs yourself, if that's what you want to do. Lost my train of thought there. Oh yeah, fruit. When you've got certain fruit that attracts fruit flies, you want to make sure you bury it. And if you have fruit that already has fruit flies in it, don't put it in here. You're better off throwing that stuff away, because once you get fruit flies in here, it takes a long time to get rid of them. They've got quite a lifespan there. So make sure that any kind of fruit that will attract fruit flies is deep down in there. Now, when you construct one of these, I live in a dry area, so I made mine with a Rubbermaid bin, a shallow one. These types of worms like to live in the top 6 inches, so anything that's, deeper than, say, 7 or 8 inches isn't going to do much good. And I didn't put any holes in the bottom. Like I said, I live in a dry area. If you live in a really moist area, you may need to drain this off, but I've never had any problems with that. In fact, sometimes I have to add water. I've drilled holes in not just the sides, but also the lid. You might be thinking, oh, will they crawl out of there? They will only crawl out if the conditions inside go bad, because they are light sensitive, so they're not going to want to crawl out. Their skin is moisture sensitive, so they're not going to want to leave any place that they don't absolutely have to. So as long as everything's happy, they'll stay in here and multiply. Now, once you get to this stage where you're finished, then the next stage is to transfer them. And what I usually do is I have 2 bins. You can see in this one I've already thrown in a few vegetables, some coffee, some tea bags, so it's kind of ready. Now normally what I'll do is once one gets close to finish, then I will take out 50 or so worms from one and feed it into the new one. Now with this is kind of dried out, but what I'll be doing with this is I will take and shred up some paper, and then that paper will go on top of this, and then I will wet it, and I'll let that water seep in and spread around for a few hours, maybe up to a day, and then I can add my 50 worms, and this will be seeded. Now, once I feel that this is completely done, then I can collect them. Now, I keep my shavings in a 5-gallon bucket, and I use them on my lawn, I use them on my garden, and I just spread them out by hand. To collect these, you simply take, and usually I'll scrape off the top, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, then let it sit in a lighted area. I'm outside right now, there's plenty of light. So once you take off the first 1/2 inch, the worms will go down. And then you come back after 10 minutes, you can take off another few inches, and the worms will go down again. Once you get down to the bottom, I'd say 1.5 inches of material, then I shuffle it all to one side into a pile, and then I keep doing the same thing. And what you end up with is you end up towards the bottom where all the worms have gathered, and then you can just take that big ball of worms and place it in your new bin. Now, depending on how you want to manage this, you can make it go fast or slow. If you want to come and turn it every week, it'll compost fast. If you just want to let it go at its own pace, it'll do it a little bit slower. You can compost anywhere from 3 to 9 months in this. If you have a larger family, I'm just doing this for myself, but if you had a group, you could rotate these. You could have 2, 3, 4, 5 bins going at the same time. These bins obviously stack, so with the lids on, you could obviously stack maybe 3 or 4 and just feed them as you go. Usually you'll feed one for a certain period of time until the paper starts to break down, and then you might stop feeding it and start a new one. With regards to the paper, I should mention, you want to get your paper up kind of high. It'll be okay when you start one of these bins. It's perfectly fine to have your paper stacked up 8 inches, maybe even 9 inches high, because it's going to be loose and the worms are going to have no trouble going through all this material. And as the paper breaks down, obviously it disappears to this point to where I think that might be paper. It's pretty much all broken down good enough. If you find any chunks in this that you want to put through again, just add them to your new one, run them through again, and you can compost all of your organics. And just to give you a rough idea of what you're recycling, when you have some tea that was imported from another country, or bananas, or any of your other fruit, the weight of that material, whatever it is going to have 2.5% of the soil from where it came from, and a lot of the rest is going to be carbon compounds that it created from the air. So really, this stuff is shipped from 1,500 miles away, 2,000 miles away. There's no reason why we should add this dirt to a landfill. It'd be much better if you could use it in a vegetable garden, flower garden, and put it to a second use. And this type of compost is good. You can grow straight in this, but it's not generally recommended. It's recommended if you were to use it in say a potting medium or something like that, you could add 10 to 20% of this material and mix it in really good, and that'll be fine. But like I said, I sprinkle this onto my lawn usually once a year. This contains a lot of helpful bacteria that helps your plants, so it's really good for everything that you've got going, especially for vegetable gardens. And obviously, if there's some worms or some I guess you would call them eggs. They're egg-like. I don't know if that's the actual proper name for them, but there's one right on top. If those get into your garden, if they haven't hatched, they can hatch into your garden and spread worms that way. So I think that pretty much wraps anything up. Again, check the side box to see if I've missed anything, and try this out. It's a really great way to compost if you can't compost any other way. And even if you can compost another way, which I now can because I have a compost bin, I still use this because in my area it gets freezing cold in the winter, and obviously a compost bin isn't very active, so I can use this with my coffee grounds all year, and in the winter I can add any kind of vegetable matter that I might pick up at the grocery store. So I think that's a wrap. Give it a try and recycle.